Weapon in the Dome, Flat Earth Apocalypse 2019 report. 21 documented historical disasters involving the exact same phenomena occurred on dates that form a perfect mathematical pattern pointing to the next global civilization cataclysm, return to year zero, the dawn of a new Neolithic age starting May 16, 2040, this being 21.4 years from the making of this video. 3 separate books have already been published on this astonishing discovery, as we will see. Unfortunately, the elite have known this for a long time and have spent decades preparing. The Weapon in the Dome is a presentation brought to you from the vault of Archaix.com, an entirely new study never before released on YouTube or in any other video presentation. It is the opinion of many that the elite, the establishment, the governments, the Smithsonian Institute, the cryptocracy, the Illuminati, the Freemasons, Men in Black, the Vatican, and others are all acting in concert in strict control of the world and future. While these groups do indeed influence the trajectory of civilization and maintain a modicum of control over humanity and the collective, this video was prepared to unveil to you that the elite are not in control of the future, that they possess a very real fear that motivates their silence. They are keenly aware that every civilization in antiquity that attempted to hide from the Weapon in the Dome failed. The ruins of these failures have been excavated all around the world. Even under the packed ice of Antarctica, the elite have seen for themselves entire underground facilities from the ancient world that did not survive. Immense subterranean strongholds specifically built to protect against the Weapon in the Dome. For those unafraid of the dark, who dare to learn what others are afraid to know, pay very close attention and enjoy this presentation. Over 2,000 years ago, Lucretius composed his epic 7,400-line poem titled On the Nature of the Universe, in which he wrote that the history of the world involved a cycle of earthquakes and that some unknown body, not the sun, darkens the earth at a fixed time. Over a century later, Pliny the Elder wrote in his Natural History that throughout the span of human memory there transpired ominous and drawn-out eclipses of the sun, and that their cause was hidden by the rarity of their occurrence, and for this reason they are not known. Pliny added that these strange darkenings of the sun were quite natural and happened at fixed times. Pliny also makes mention of several regular eclipses demonstrating that he understood the difference. His published work cites no less than 474 ancient authors and works, and this was almost 2,000 years ago. Pliny met his death in the year 79 when Mount Vesuvius erupted, totally burying the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. Any of these men you see in these pictures could have been or known Pliny personally. Almost 25 centuries ago, Herodotus of Halicarnassus, renowned today as the father of history, recorded in his book that Halys of Miletus had studied in Egypt and traveled around the world. Halys was founder of the Ionian school of astronomy and considered later as one of the 7 wise men of Greece. Herodotus wrote that 5 years of continual warfare between the Medes and Lydians ended when suddenly the day was turned to night. He wrote, this change from daylight to darkness had been foretold to the Ionians by Halys of Miletus, who fixed the date for it in the year in which it did in fact take place. In his account, Herodotus is careful to mention 3 eclipses that occurred, caused by the moon, demonstrating that the daylight suddenly turning to night was not caused by the lunar orb. This was the Battle of Halys, and though it occurred in 583 BC, many scholars are convinced that it happened in May 585 BC, because their eclipse computations show no eclipses occurred in 583, and they further ignore that Thales' prediction was made in 585, which was the 4th year of the 48th Olympiad, though it happened later. Unfortunately, because they believe every sun darkening episode had to involve the moon, many historically accepted dates for famous events are wrong. This sun darkening episode was in the 24th year of the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon, who was one of the kings who witnessed the peace treaty between the Medes and the Lydians. A monumental relief at Yassilakia in Asia Minor, noted by Emanuel Velikovsky, shows kings of Lydia and Media together holding up an eclipsed sun, denoting a treaty. It was also in this year that something caused the priests of the very old Delphic Oracle of Greece to throw away their older timekeeping system and initiate a new calendar called the Pythian calendar. This also transpired in the Far East. Something influenced the Japanese to begin their regnal list with the first emperor who was associated to the sun, the Chronicle of Japan, beginning 583 BC and called Nihon Shoki. The Encyclopedia of World Facts and Dates records that the sun darkening that stopped the battle occurred in the month of May. Historian Philip Vandenberg also records the sun darkening to be May in his book The Mystery of the Oracles. In order to have predicted with exactitude the darkening of the sun infers heavily that Thales was the initiate to a large corpus of chronological records. These must have documented the same phenomenon in the distant past. We can now put aside the layers of academic disinformation concerning the sun darkening of Thales because we have now isolated a most amazing fixed timeline of 21 sun darkening episodes that occurred both before and after the accurate prediction by Thales. We will now go back deeper into the ancient past, 552 years to the year 1135 BC. In 1135 BC, the ancient late Bronze Age world was met with a disaster. In the annals of King Nebuchadnezzar I of Babylon of the Second Babylonian Dynasty, we find a reference to the darkening of the sun by an object described like a comet. This is mentioned by historian Frank Joseph in his The Destruction of Atlantis. It is my own theory that the second Nebuchadnezzar, also infamous for destroying Jerusalem, who lived 5.5 centuries later, merely received that throne name because of the darkening of the sun predicted in 583 BC by Thales, being similar to that as that had occurred in 1135 BC when the first Nebuchadnezzar was sitting on the throne. Either that or this was highly coincidental. In the second year of Pharaoh Setnakti of Egypt, an immense black darkness covered the sky, and the sun turned blood red and disappeared. It became night during the day, and dusts rained from the sky. This was also mentioned by Frank Joseph in his Survivors of Atlantis. Setnakti disappeared with the founding of the 20th dynasty of Egypt and was succeeded by Ramesses III. Scholars have written that great upheavals occurred in the reign of Ramesses III, and Dr. Renal de Jong, in his How the Sun God Reached America, reports that at this time, approximately 3.8 million people perished in a cataclysm. Further, at Medinet Habu is a record of a tsunami that hit Egypt during the reign of Ramesses III. It is well known to historians that at this time began a great Mediterranean Dark Age. It is apparent that the destructive event that ended Setnakti's reign began Ramesses III's rule, evident in the posthumous title Setnakti, which refers to Set, also known as Typhon, a sky dragon that devoured the sun. This sky monster, Typhon, is the origin of the Greek belief in the phoenix, which would plunge into the sun. It was in the month of May, 1135 BC, that according to the Irish Book of Invasions in the Second Battle of Moytura, the invading Tuatha De Danann astonished the Firbolgs by darkening the sun for 3 days. The dragon is the 5th animal of the Chinese calendar, and in the 5th month is May, often associated with the phoenix in China that was called Feng, a red sky bird. The Longyu caves are mysterious, and they are a series of large artificial sandstone caverns located on the Q River and called in Chinese Phoenix Hill, dated approximately 1200 BC. It is believed that they were built to protect a population against a coming disaster. In 1135 BC, the collapse of the Shang dynasty occurred, 250,000 Asians vanishing in fleets to reappear in Central America. End of the Shang dynasty was called Yin by Chinese historians, which means darkness, according to the Encyclopedia of World Facts and Dates. In Japan, the phoenix is the rain dragon, bringing reddish rains colored by its blood, according to the Japanese Book of Tea. It is an obvious assumption that the further back we go in distant history, the less we will uncover in the unveiling of any theory or premise. However, in scrutinizing the records of the old world in search of precise chronological data involving these darkenings of the sun, we find the exact opposite to be true. It is astonishing that we now find even more records when we look 552 years before 1135 BC to the distant year 1687 BC, over 37 centuries ago. After decades of research on the ancient Bronze Age civilizations, historian W.J. Perry in the year 1923 published a huge book titled Children of the Sun, in which he concludes, after providing a wealth of information, that civilizations around the world collapsed into chaos simultaneously at about the year 1688 BC. He theorizes that the ruling family ceased referring to themselves as children of the sun, but he admits he does not know why. We know that at this time the 11th dynasty of Egypt collapsed, giving opportunity for the Hyksos invasion. Even Egyptologists are aware of the chaos of this period, calling it the Second Intermediate Period. For centuries, Egyptians preserved knowledge on coffin texts, but now these are replaced by the suddenly appearing mortuary texts that have baffled Egyptologists, written on rolls of papyrus. The Egyptians hated the Hyksos and associated them to Set, also known as Typhon. The Hyksos were regarded as sons of Typhon, meaning they appeared in Egypt in association with the vast destruction caused by Typhon, the phoenix. This is no theory. An Egyptian papyrus written in Greek but dated as being a copy of an older text has been discovered, dated from the time of Amenhotep, which specifically reads, "In the Typhon time the sun is veiled." In the year 279 BC were discovered the ancient Chinese bamboo books, records from the Old World in early Bronze Age China. In these records we find a reference to a series of disasters during the Shi dynasty involving yellow fogs, the darkening of the sun, and famine in what translates in our Western calendar as 1688 BC. In the Hebrew book of Jasher, the darkening of the sun and earthquakes that terrified the world are mentioned as occurring in the days of Jacob, precisely at the time of the rape of Dinah by the men of Shechem. Biblical chronologist Stephen Jones, in his book The Secrets of Time, shows using meticulous chronological records that these events transpired in the year 1687 BC. Jones knowing nothing of this Phoenix research or this chronology. Stonehenge is dated by Sir Norman Lockyer as circa 1680 BC. However, this merely demonstrates how precise Lockyer's data was, though his conclusion deviated from the truth. He calculated the obliquity angle of Stonehenge's present axis to derive his conclusion, and Lockyer was convinced that the site was built to commemorate the month of May. Stonehenge was damaged, toppled, and rebuilt around 1680 BC due to the 1687 BC global quakes that toppled some of the trilithons. The actual origin has been positively attributed to the mid-4th millennium BC, about 3100 BC. Lockyer merely dated Stonehenge 3, which was the reconstruction of a damaged holy site. In the mythological traditions of ancient Greece, King Phoroneos ruled in Argos in 1687 BC, which according to Roman historian Marcus Varro, who died in 27 BC in his book Of the Race of the Roman People, cited by Augustine, wrote, "There occurred a remarkable celestial portent, for Castor records that in the brilliant star Venus there occurred a strange prodigy in the reign of Archaix." The ancient Romans reading this associated it to Venus, but phonetically this could also be Phoenix. Amazingly, Frank Joseph in Survivors of Atlantis notes that a widespread cataclysm happened about 1628 BC and that ancient Near Eastern reliefs recorded the appearance in the sky of the great celestial body, and they called it Ninciana. Joseph also notes that other researchers and scholars automatically dismiss this Ninciana as just being the planet Venus. Scholars have always maintained the habit of dismissing phenomena they cannot explain. In the traditions of the Archaic deluge, we learn that the famine afterward lasted 25 years. In China, there was a famine according to the bamboo books, and in the ancient Mexican traditions in the Codex Quimalpopoca relate a terrible heavenly disturbance when darkness covered the whole vault of the sky that lasted 25 years. In opposite hemispheres, the same story. This is intriguing because the ruins of Tiahuanaco in the Urubamba Valley, also in the Americas, have been radiocarbon dated to circa 1700 BC. Locals tell that the ruins were built prior to a great darkness, the dying of the sun. Solinus in Polyhistor related that the flooding of the Mediterranean was followed by 9 months of darkness. And Julius Africanus wrote that after the Archaean deluge, the land of Attica remained desolate and without a king for 189 years. Historian Castleton wrote that ruins on Thera in the Mediterranean yield a date about 1700 BC. After this destruction that visited Crete, a new system of writing suddenly appeared throughout the Mediterranean, Linear A. The megalithic city of Dwarka off the coast of India was submerged and lost in the upheaval, now discovered, dated circa 1700 BC. The sinking of the city, according to the Bhagavad Purana, straggled 2 great world ages. It was this cataclysm that buried the famous Phaistos disk and the Minoan artifact that will remain undiscovered until the year 1903. Stone working projects were abandoned instantly, archaeologists having uncovered tools and materials lying about as if workers suddenly fled and never came back. Baalbek in Lebanon, Tiwanaku in South America, the basalt city of Metalanin in the Pacific half submerged on Ponape Island, ruins of Central America's Olmecs, Easter Island. The workshops on the island were abandoned rapidly, according to Professor Macmillan Brown, saying, "It would seem that a catastrophe had visited the island without warning." Also, vast mining operations in copper fields of North America and Canada around Lake Michigan dated circa 1700 BC have been found with tools lying everywhere. 10 wagon loads of stone hammers left behind by people in a hurry to get somewhere else. Pliny the Elder, who provided us some of our data for the sun darkenings recorded by historians in the past, himself died in the year 79 while attempting a rescue during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in Italy. Pliny and his men died, buried alive under the new land surface that covered Pompeii and Herculaneum, entombing these cities under hundreds of millions of tons of volcanic pumice. Pliny was unaware that these cities and region of Italy were built over the ruined communities that were buried alive far beneath them from the volcanic wrath of Vesuvius in the year 1687 BC. Known to historians as the Avellino eruption. History is full of ironies. The following was released in 2006 by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America. A volcanic catastrophe even more devastating than the famous Anno Domini 79 Pompeii eruption occurred during the Old Bronze Age at Vesuvius. The huge eruption size caused a social demographic collapse and the total abandonment of the entire area for centuries. 583 BC was 552 years after 1135 BC, and this date was itself 552 years after 1687 BC. So now we shall go farther back, another 552 years, to the year 2239 BC, the year of the most widely remembered and recorded cataclysm in all of world history. Once more, we defer to the meticulous biblical chronology published in The Secrets of Time by Stephen Jones, who, without any knowledge of these particular sun-darkening disasters, were 552 years apart from one another, dated the Great Flood of Genesis as occurring in 2239 BC. Of further interest is the fact that Frank Joseph, author of The Destruction of Atlantis and another work cited earlier, mentions that at the Great Flood, according to several traditions, the sun darkened. What's intriguing is that Joseph had never published any chronology of sun darkening episodes like we have here to demonstrate that he had this knowledge, and yet he cites traditions that this disaster occurred in the year 2240 BC. Jones dates this passage in the Book of Jasher as occurring 2239 BC. The Lord caused the whole earth to shake, and the sun darkened, and the foundations of the world raged, and the whole earth was moved violently, and at the end of 7 days the waters of the flood were upon the earth. Almost 2,000 years ago, Flavius Josephus in Antiquities 165 wrote that Abraham was born 292 years after the Great Flood. Several biblical and Jewish chronologists hold that Abraham was born in 1948 BC. This is found in a book almost 1,000 years old titled The Leviticus Rabbi 29:1. In the Talmudic commentary of Rashi, which states that 1948 BC of the Western world's calendar was the date of Abraham's birth. Chronologist Stephen Jones also dates the birth of Abram in 1948 BC. Thus the 292 years of Josephus provides us the exact date of the Great Deluge at 2239 BC. Though the descendants of the Nephilim-related people were still alive in the days of Abram, the Anakim and the Rephaim, whole races of giants were drowned in the deluge cataclysm. In the Mayan Quiché text Popol Vuh, we read of a terrible flood that destroyed the human race when the sun darkened, as cited from the book Mysteries of Ancient South America by Harold Wilkins. Having studied numerous old world flood traditions, Wilkins concluded that an unknown object blocked out the sun for a long time. A red mud and reddish dust fell from the sky, sometimes as red rains, as earthquakes shook the world and oceans slipped from their basins, resulting with the majority of mankind killed. With over 500 well-documented flood traditions and citations from ancient texts around the world, we are not going to revisit this subject. It is apparent to the chronologist that many old world timekeeping systems, calendars, and whole civilizations suddenly vanished in 2240 or began. The phoenix is merely an attempt of ancient man to describe the weapon in the dome. The highly advanced Technolithic civilizations of the pre-flood cataclysm world were wiped out, the survivors repopulating and rebuilding with inferior methods. These Heliolithic master builders then met their end in 1687 BC when the weapon in the dome returned. Scattered abroad even more, the descendants were again visited and decimated in 1135 BC. In 583 BC, the Eurasian continents witnessed the pass of the weapon of the dome. But so perfect and complete was the destruction of ancient American civilizations in 583 BC that no written records were left behind. From a variety of early textual sources from Egyptian and Greek historians, Babylonian annals, Irish traditional records in the Book of Invasions and Annals on Clonmacnois, to biblical and Hebraic texts, Chinese bamboo books and seal inscriptions, as well as the research of modern authors and chronologists, we have in these few moments easily reconstructed the timing of the phenomenon underlying the badly misunderstood yet historically persistent legend of the Phoenix. With a casual walk through the pages of history, we can now understand how Thales predicted the darkening of the sun, why Lucretius believed sun darkenings were caused by some unknown body, and why Pliny stressed that these eclipses of the sun were unusually long. We have covered a period of 1656 years from 2239 BC to 583 BC that involved 4 sun darkening events. The Great Deluge in 2239 BC was the worst, reducing the human population by 80%. The 1687 BC cataclysm 552 years later again depopulated the planet, but by about 50%. The 1135 BC disasters 552 years later were of lesser effect. However, we have no records from the cultures and civilizations that just vanished. And 552 years later, in 583 BC, the sun darkening was predicted, but little is known of any real harm done. For those of you who know your Bibles, this 1656 years should be very familiar to you, for the Genesis chronology is found in most Bibles, and it has been known for at least 19 centuries that the duration of the entire pre-flood world was 1656 years, until the year of the Great Flood. Charles Fort in the Book of the Damned in 1919 wrote, "There are several allusions to intense darknesses that have occurred upon this earth, quite as eclipses occur, but are not referable to any known eclipsing body." Hundreds of books and many video presentations have offered theories about the purpose of the ancient Antikythera computer discovered by sponge divers off the coast of Crete among underwater ship ruins in the year 1900. This incredibly sophisticated device of precision-cut metal differential gears is said by mainstream and fringe researchers to have been used to predict eclipses and the movements of the sun and moon. But this is only partially true. The device has a unique pointer that marks a single year in history, and Zecharia Sitchin wrote that he believed that this pointer was the key to understanding the purpose of this computer. Sitchin wrote that he believed the pointer to indicate the year 584 BC. It is my contention that the Antikythera computer or a similar device was used by Halys to predict the sun darkening event in 583 BC. Halys' prediction was made in 585. The Phoenix chronology appears to be the only satisfactory explanation for the existence of this amazing ancient computer. To date, not one researcher has put forth a demonstration showing how the device could have been used to accurately predict normal eclipses caused by the moon. These 4 sun darkening episodes and catastrophes were remembered in the ancient Americas as the 4 sun ages, each sun dying and replaced by a successor, the belief permanently inscribed on the stone of the 5th sun. Further, it was the tradition of many Native American cultures to count the beginning of the year as the month of May. The black sun, the red eye of Horus, Assyrian astronomical records, the sun darkening over Joppa during the earthquake in the legend of Perseus and the Kraken, Atreus winning the throne of the Achaeans by accurately predicting the darkening of the sun, the original prophecies of Mother Shipton, named Ursula Southfield, before the forgeries were introduced, in the mysterious quatrains of Nostradamus, in the minutes of the Royal Astronomical Society, entered in by astronomer Hoffman in 1764, the prophecies of the Old Testament seers, of Jesus, the apostles, the Book of Revelation, and within the secrets of the Great Pyramid of Giza, my books record the Phoenix chronology and demonstrate perfectly that the next Phoenix cataclysm is May 16, 2040. And just as in earlier times, the elite will burrow down into their underground facilities and hide. Many of them will not survive, but become trapped under ice sheets, buried under hundreds of feet of volcanic resurfacing, crushed under immense pressure, or drowned underneath seas that slip their basins. As before, those survivors from their bunkers will emerge with their technology and resources intact and begin to rule over surface-dwelling survivors who have lost everything and will regard them as gods. There is a definitive reason why the symbol for the 33rd degree of Masonry, the Society of World Builders, is the Phoenix. The Phoenix was always the symbol for a burned world reborn. Remember, this presentation merely covered 4 of the 21 documented historical appearances of the weapon in the dome, and it is my policy that not one of my published or unpublished books found on Archaix.com ever cite an internet source. All source materials are from original books and reports. The Phoenix object is no intruder planet, no Nibiru, no rogue comet, or any other astronomical body. If our world is truly hurling through space so fast it spins 365.25 times at an obliquity of 23.5 degrees as it covers an elliptical distance of 5 million miles looping around a star that is itself moving at heroic velocity, then no astronomical body could ever maintain so perfect a timing as to visit our world again and again in the same month. No, this is a cataclysm protocol, a vast mechanism in the vault of our false heavens disguising itself as a natural phenomenon, a weapon of intelligent design that sets human civilizations back to year 0 when it finds them at peace, civilized and enlightened, destroying whole hemispheres or the entire world with such perfect regularity that we can easily calculate its next visitation. It does not matter whether you believe you exist on a sphere or a plane. The mathematics of apocalypse is clear. The weapon in the dome returns May 16, 2040. That the future was never meant to be known is a modern fiction perpetuated by those who don't want you to know it. Knowledge filters have been cast over the truth by our greatest institutions of learning, and history has been concealed by those invested with the responsibility to reveal it. Our learned predecessor, Pliny the Elder, lamented this condition when he remarked that nothing is being added to the sum of knowledge as a result of original research, and that today's researchers ignore the findings of those that preceded them. This is why I invite you to learn what others are afraid to know, to visit Archaix.com and see for yourself that our mysterious past is indeed known, as is our near harrowing future, as well as the fact that on an individual personal level, we can all learn to draw from ourselves more than we contain. We are immortals trapped in the mire. Remembering who we are is the key to everything. Inside Archaix.com, you can remove the veil that's been placed over your eyes. Visit Archaix.com today.